Lisa Rodriguez stared at her console screen in the communications bay of the research vessel, Terra's Hope. The green dots that showed active human colonies had been going dark one by one for the past 3 days. First, it was New Berlin Colony, then Hope Station, followed by Paradise Bay and the mining world of Iron Ridge. Each time she tried to contact them, she got nothing but empty space talking back to her. Captain Jake Morrison walked into the Cumbay with his morning coffee. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes who had been running supply missions between colonies for 20 years. Lisa turned to face him with worry written all over her face. "Captain, we have a problem," she said. "I'm getting no response from 17 colonies in the Outer Rim. All their automated beacons went silent at the same time." Morrison took a sip of his coffee and frowned. "Could be solar interference. That star system has been acting up lately." But even as he said it, he didn't sound like he believed his own words. Lisa shook her head and pointed at her screen. "Sir, these colonies are spread across 8 different star systems. There's no way solar interference could hit all of them at once." The captain set down his coffee cup and leaned over her shoulder to look at the display. The map of human space looked like a Christmas tree with lights going out. Every colony beyond the Centauri system showed red status lights instead of the normal green. "Have you tried the emergency channels?" he asked. "That's what scares me, Captain. The emergency beacons are dead too. These systems are designed to work even if the colonies lose power. Something would have to physically destroy them to make them stop transmitting." Dr. Alan Carter entered the Cumbay at that moment. He was the ship's xenobiologist, a thin man with thick glasses who studied alien life forms. "Captain, I've been monitoring some strange transmissions from the direction of New Berlin. They're not human frequencies." Morrison felt a cold feeling in his stomach. "What kind of transmissions?" "Zephyrian," Carter replied. "Military frequencies. Very active chatter, going back and forth between multiple ships." The 3 humans looked at each other in silence. The Zephyrians had been humanity's allies for 50 years. They were tall, blue-skinned beings who claimed to value peace and cooperation between species. Their technology was more advanced than human tech, but they had always been willing to share knowledge and trade resources. The idea that they might be involved in whatever was happening to the colonies seemed impossible. "There has to be an explanation," Morrison said. "Maybe they're responding to some kind of emergency. Maybe they're trying to help." Lisa's console suddenly came alive with an incoming transmission. The signal was weak and full of static, but it was definitely coming from New Berlin Colony. "I'm getting something," she said as her fingers flew over the controls. "It's heavily damaged, but I think I can clean it up." The 3 of them watched as the static slowly cleared away. The image that appeared on screen made their blood run cold. They could see the New Berlin Colony spaceport with buildings on fire in the background. Human colonists were running in panic while Zephyrian soldiers in powered armor chased them. Down, the person holding the camera was breathing hard and crying. "This is Dr. Sarah Williams at New Berlin Colony," the voice said through the static. "The Zephyrians have invaded. They came without warning. They're killing everyone. Men, women, children. They're not taking prisoners. They're just killing us all. Oh God, they're in the medical center now. I can hear the screaming. If anyone receives this message, don't come here. Don't trust them. They're not our allies anymore. They never were." The transmission cut to static and then went dead. The 3 people in the Cumbay stared at the blank screen in shock. Morrison was the first to speak. "That can't be real. There has to be some mistake." But even as he said it, more transmissions were coming in from other colonies. Each one told the same story. Zephyrian fleets appearing without warning. Orbital bombardments that destroyed cities in minutes. Ground forces that hunted down every human they could find. No prisoners, no mercy. Just systematic extermination. Engineer Tony Walsh joined them in the Bay after hearing the alarm signals. He was a stocky man with oil-stained coveralls who kept the ship's engines running. "What's all the noise about?" he asked. Then he saw the expressions on their faces, and his smile faded. "What happened?" Morrison quickly explained what they had discovered. Tony listened in growing horror as the captain described the transmissions from the colonies. "You're saying the Zephyrians are attacking human worlds?" Tony asked. "All of them?" "It looks that way," Carter said quietly. "And based on the timing, this was coordinated. They hit every human settlement outside the Sol system at the same time. This wasn't some random attack. This was planned." Lisa was still working at her console, trying to reach any human colony that might still be alive. "I'm getting automated distress signals from 12 more worlds," she reported. "But there, all the same message. Orbital bombardment detected. Colony defenses destroyed. Population centers under attack." Then they cut off. Morrison made a decision. "Set course for Earth. We need to warn them about what's happening out here." But when they reached the edge of the solar system 3 days later, they found Zephyrian battle fleets waiting for them. Dozens of massive warships were positioned at every jump point that led to human space. Any ship trying to reach Earth or the inner colonies would have to go through them. "They're not just attacking the outer colonies," Morrison realized. "They're cutting off escape routes. They're trapping us." Tony was studying the enemy fleet positions on his engineering display. "Captain, with that many ships, they could stop any human vessel from reaching Earth. But why would they want to cut us off from our home system?" Carter had been monitoring Zephyrian communications since they arrived at the blockade. His face was pale as he translated what he was hearing. "They're calling it the cleansing," he said. "They're talking about the successful removal of what they call the human plague. They're saying that human worlds will make good breeding colonies once they're properly sterilized." The terrible truth hit all of them at the same time. This wasn't just an attack or an invasion. The Zephyrians were trying to wipe out the entire human species. Every man, woman, and child. Every trace of human civilization. They wanted to erase humanity from the galaxy completely. Morrison ordered the ship to retreat to the asteroid fields, where they could hide and monitor Zephyrian communications. As Terra's Hope drifted silently among the space rocks, the crew listened to their enemies, celebrating what they believed was the extinction of the human race. But the Zephyrians had made one critical mistake. Some humans had survived, and now they knew the truth about their so-called allies. 6 months had passed since the Terra's Hope crew discovered the truth about the Zephyrian genocide. Captain Morrison had kept the ship hidden in the Helix Nebula, using the radiation to mask their presence from enemy sensors. The crew had spent those months monitoring communications and searching for other human survivors. What they found gave them hope they had thought was lost forever. Navigator Susan Blake had been working around the clock to map possible hiding spots where humans might have escaped the initial attack. She was a small woman with short brown hair who had once charted courses for civilian cargo ships. Now she was plotting survival routes for what remained of her species. "Captain, I've identified 17 locations where humans might still be alive," she reported during the morning briefing. Morrison studied the star chart she had prepared. "What makes you think survivors would be in these places?" "Deep space mining stations, research outposts, and colony ships that were in transit during the attack," Susan explained. "Places the Zephyrians might have overlooked because they weren't on the main colony lists. Most of these installations are in dead systems with no valuable resources." Dr. Carter had been analyzing the patterns of Zephyrian attacks. The aliens were very thorough, but they focused on established colonies and major population centers. They might have missed smaller installations that weren't broadcasting regular signals. Over the next few weeks, Tara's Hope carefully approached each location on Susan's list. The first 3 sites were empty ruins, but at the 4th location, they found something that made the entire crew cheer. A small mining station called Rocky Point was not only intact, but still operational. When Lisa Rodriguez sent a coded human distress signal, they received an answer within minutes. "This is Commander Helen Price of Rocky Point Station," came the reply. "Please identify yourself and state your intentions." Morrison felt tears in his eyes as he responded. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the research vessel Tara's Hope. We're human survivors looking for other survivors." The silence that followed lasted almost a full minute. Then Commander Price's voice came back, shaky with emotion. "Captain Morrison, we thought we were the only ones left alive. Please dock at Bay 7. We have much to discuss." Rocky Point Station housed 43 human miners and their families. Commander Price was a former military officer who had been managing the mining operation when the Zephyrian attacks began. She was a tall woman with gray streaks in her black hair and the bearing of someone used to command. "We saw the colony. Ships burning," she told Morrison. "We went into full communications blackout and have been hiding ever since." But Rocky Point wasn't the only survivor enclave they found. Over the following months, Tara's Hope made contact with 6 more hidden human outposts. It was Deep Space Research Station Alpha with its team of 12 scientists. The cargo freighter Wanderer had been between systems during the attacks and was carrying 38 passengers. The mining colony at Dead Rock had survived because the Zephyrians considered their asteroid field too dangerous to approach. The most significant find was the colony ship New Frontier. It had been on a 10-year journey to establish a settlement in the Outer Rim when the genocide began. The ship carried over 300 colonists, including families with children. Captain Lisa Park had kept the ship hidden in the shadow of a gas giant while they decided what to do next. As word spread through hidden channels, more survivors appeared. A scientific expedition that had been studying alien ruins. A military patrol that had been investigating pirate activity in the outer systems. Small groups of refugees who had escaped the colony attacks in damaged ships. By the end of their first year in hiding, the human survivors numbered nearly 800 people. Commander Price took charge of coordinating the scattered groups. She established the Helix Nebula base as their main gathering point, using the dangerous radiation to keep Zephyrian scouts away. "We're not just hiding anymore," she announced during their first full gathering. "We're organizing." Dr. Carter made a disturbing discovery while examining captured Zephyrian equipment from abandoned human colonies. The aliens had been planning the genocide for decades. Their computers contained detailed maps of every human settlement, complete analyses of human military capabilities, and biological studies of human weaknesses. "They've been studying us like laboratory animals," he reported to the Survivor Council. "Every trade agreement, every cultural exchange, every diplomatic meeting was part of their intelligence gathering." Engineer Tony Walsh had been working with technical teams from other survivor groups to analyze Zephyrian technology. "The good news is their equipment isn't as advanced as we thought," he said. "They've been holding back their best technology to maintain their advantage over us. But now that we know what we're facing, we can adapt." The survivors established a network of hidden supply caches and communication relays throughout the outer systems. Pilot Rick Stone led scouting missions to observe Zephyrian activities on former human worlds. What he reported back made everyone's blood boil with rage. The aliens weren't just occupying human colonies. They were systematically destroying every trace of human existence. "They're burning libraries and museums," Rick reported after returning from a reconnaissance mission to New Berlin. They're tearing down statues and monuments. They're even killing the earth plants and animals that colonists brought with them. It's like they want to erase any proof that humans ever existed. Susan Blake had been mapping Zephyrian patrol routes and occupation patterns. They're spread thin, she observed. They're trying to cover too much territory with limited forces. Most of their fleets are tied up in occupation duties. Commander Price studied the tactical data during their evening briefing. They think they've won. They think we're extinct. That gives us an advantage they don't know we have. The survivors spent the next several months gathering intelligence and building their strength. They salvaged equipment from abandoned human installations. They studied Zephyrian technology and tactics. They trained in combat techniques and guerrilla warfare. Most importantly, they planned. Dr. Carter had been working on something that troubled his conscience. Using genetic samples from captured Zephyrian equipment, he had developed a biological weapon specifically designed to target Zephyrian physiology. It would be effective, he admitted to the Leadership Council. But using it would make us know better than them. Commander Price made the decision for all of them. We save that weapon as a last resort. If we're going to fight back, we do it as humans, not as monsters. The debate that followed lasted for days. Some survivors wanted immediate revenge. Others argued for trying to contact other alien species for help. But in the end, they reached a unanimous decision. The Zephyrians had tried to commit genocide against their entire species. The aliens had shown no mercy to human children, to human civilians, to anyone. They had celebrated the deaths of billions of innocent people. The survivors would respond in kind, but they would do it their way. They would hunt down every Zephyrian installation. They would destroy every enemy base. They would make the aliens pay for what they had done. But they would not become genocidal monsters themselves. They would remain human, even in their quest for justice. As the second year of their survival began, the scattered refugees had transformed into something the galaxy had never seen before. They were no longer running or hiding. They were preparing to strike back against the species that had tried to erase them from existence. The hunt was about to begin. 2 years had passed since the human survivors first gathered in the Helix Nebula. The scattered refugees who once hid in fear had transformed into something the galaxy had never seen before. Commander Helen Price stood in the main operations center of their hidden base, watching tactical displays that showed the locations of every known Zephyrian installation within 50 light years. Chief Engineer Danny Cooper had been working day and night to develop new technologies for their war against the aliens. He was a quiet man with steady hands who had once maintained civilian transport ships. Now he designed weapons of war. The new stealth systems are ready, he reported to Price. Our ships can get within weapons range of Zephyrian installations without being detected. The stealth technology used principles that Danny had learned from studying the nebula's radiation patterns. Human ships could now mask their energy signatures to appear like natural space phenomena. To Zephyrian sensors, a human warship would look like nothing more than a floating piece of space debris. Weapons specialist Karen Liu had developed devastating new armaments designed specifically to penetrate Zephyrian defenses. She was a former military engineer who had escaped the destruction of Hope Station. Their shields are strong against energy weapons, but they have a weakness, she explained to the strike team leaders. Kinetic projectiles at high velocity can punch right through their defensive barriers. The human survivors had spent months studying captured Zephyrian technology and tactics. They knew exactly how the alien ships operated, how their weapons systems worked, and most importantly, how to destroy them. Every piece of intelligence they gathered was shared among all survivor groups through their hidden communication network. Strike team leader Paul Rogers was a former colony security officer who had lost his entire family in the initial attacks. He was a big man with cold eyes, who spoke little but trained constantly. "The target is Kepler Station," he briefed his team. "It's a Zephyrian research facility where they're studying captured human technology. 24 aliens on board, minimal defenses." The attack on Kepler Station marked the beginning of humanity's war of revenge. Paul's team approached the facility using the new stealth technology, appearing on sensors as nothing more than cosmic dust. When they were close enough, they launched a coordinated assault that lasted exactly 17 minutes. The Zephyrians never had a chance to send a distress signal. Paul's team moved through the station with deadly efficiency, eliminating every alien they found. They destroyed all research data, took whatever useful technology they could carry, and left behind a simple message written in Zephyrian script. "You tried to erase us. Now you will pay the price." Intelligence Officer Maria Santos had been monitoring Zephyrian communications for months. She was a former diplomatic translator who now used her language skills for war. "They're completely unprepared for this," she reported after the Kepler Station attack. "Their military is spread across dozens of human worlds they're occupying. They never considered that we might have survived." The success of the first strike gave the human survivors confidence to expand their operations. Commander Price had identified 17 priority targets, research stations, supply depots, and communication relays that supported Zephyrian occupation forces. Each target would be hit by a different strike team using the same tactics that had worked at Kepler Station. Dr. Carter continued his disturbing work on the biological weapon he had developed. The moral weight of what he had created troubled him deeply. "It would kill every Zephyrian in a star system within days," he confided to Captain Morrison. "Their entire species could be extinct within a year if we deployed it widely." Morrison studied the data on Carter's weapon with mixed feelings. "And what would that make us?" "Survivors," Carter replied, "but also genocidal monsters, just like them." The Human Leadership Council debated the use of the biological weapon for hours. Some argued that the Zephyrians deserved the same fate they had tried to inflict on humanity. Others insisted that using such a weapon would destroy their souls, even if it saved their species. In the end, they decided to keep the weapon as a final option while pursuing conventional warfare. Strike team operations continued across human space. The attack on mining platform 7 left 32 Zephyrians dead and destroyed critical supplies heading to occupied colonies. The assault on communication relay beta cut off alien forces in 3 star systems from their command structure. Each successful mission made the survivors bolder and more confident. Susan Blake had been tracking Zephyrian response patterns to the human attacks. "They're starting to realize they have a problem," she observed. "Fleet movements show they're pulling ships back from occupation duties to hunt for us. But the aliens were hunting for an enemy they didn't understand. The Zephyrians expected to face the same kind of military forces they had easily destroyed 2 years earlier. They didn't know how to fight an enemy that appeared without warning, struck with devastating precision, and vanished back into space like ghosts. Engineer Tony Walsh had been working with strike teams to develop new tactics for ship-to-ship combat. "Their warships are designed to fight other warships in open battle," he explained. "They're not built to handle small, fast ships that attack from multiple directions." The human survivors used their knowledge of Zephyrian weaknesses to devastating effect. They would approach enemy ships using asteroid fields and nebula clouds for cover. They would strike at the exact points where alien shields were weakest. They would disable enemy engines and weapon systems before moving in for the kill. Pilot Rick Stone led the most daring mission yet attempted. His target was a Zephyrian heavy cruiser that was transporting prisoners from New Berlin Colony to an unknown destination. "We're not leaving our people in alien hands," he declared before launching his attack. The rescue mission succeeded beyond their hopes. Rick's team disabled the cruiser and rescued 47 human prisoners who had somehow survived the initial genocide attempt. Among them was Dr. Sarah Williams, whose desperate transmission from New Berlin had first alerted Terra's. Hope to the Zephyrian betrayal. The rescued prisoners brought disturbing news about Zephyrian plans. "They're not just destroying our colonies," Dr. Williams reported. "They're building new cities where human settlements used to be. They're bringing in Zephyrian families to colonize our worlds. They want to replace us completely." This revelation hardened the resolve of every human survivor. The aliens weren't content with genocide. They wanted to steal humanity's legacy, to build their civilization on the graves of human children. Such an insult to the memory of their dead could not be tolerated. Commander Price authorized an escalation of operations. Instead of hitting one target at a time, human strike teams would coordinate simultaneous attacks across multiple star systems. The message to the Zephyrians would be clear. Humanity was not extinct, and their day of reckoning had begun. The night before the coordinated strikes began, the survivors held a memorial service for all the humans who had died in the genocide. They read the names of colonies that no longer existed. They remembered friends and family members who would never see justice done. And they promised that the Zephyrian species would pay in full for what they had taken from humanity. When the attacks began, 17 Zephyrian installations died in the same hour. Each strike team left behind the same message in alien script. The hunt had begun in earnest, and there would be no mercy for the species that had tried to erase humanity from the galaxy. Admiral Vexstar stood in the command center of the Zephyrian flagship Eternal Glory, staring at tactical displays that showed the destruction of yet another military outpost. In the past 6 months, the humans had destroyed over 60 Zephyrian installations across 12 star systems. The species he had believed extinct was now hunting his people with terrifying efficiency. "How many ships did we lose at Gamma Station?" Vexstar asked his aide, Commander Zeflock. "All of them, Admiral." The human attack ships struck from 6 different directions simultaneously. "Our forces never had time to coordinate a defense." Vexstar's blue skin darkened with anger. He had been the architect of the human genocide, the mastermind behind what the Zephyrian government called the cleansing. The operation had been perfect in every detail. Every human colony had been identified and targeted. Every escape route had been blocked. The extermination had been swift and complete, except it hadn't been complete at all. The humans who survived were nothing like the peaceful colonists and researchers that Zephyrian forces had slaughtered 2 years earlier. These survivors fought with a savage intensity that shocked even experienced military officers. They showed no mercy to captured Zephyrians. They took no prisoners. They left no witnesses alive to report their tactics. "Mobilize the entire third fleet," Vexstar ordered. "I want every ship we have hunting these human terrorists. They end this embarrassment now." But even as Zephyrian military forces scrambled to respond to the human threat, other alien species throughout the galaxy were taking notice of the conflict. The news that humanity had survived their supposed extinction was spreading through diplomatic channels and trade networks. More importantly, the implications of what the Zephyrians had attempted was causing serious concern among other species. Ambassador Krell of the Axiom Confederation sat in his private chambers aboard the diplomatic station Harmony Point, reading intelligence reports about the ongoing war between humans and Zephyrians. The Axiom were an ancient reptilian species that valued stability above all else. They had opposed the human genocide from the beginning, but lacked the military power to intervene directly. Krell's aide, a younger Axiom named Sithmar, entered the chamber with an encrypted message. "Ambassador, we've received a communication from the human survivors. They're requesting a meeting." The message was brief and direct, transmitted on an old diplomatic frequency that the Zephyrians probably didn't monitor. To the Axiom Confederation, we know you opposed our extermination. We request safe harbor for diplomatic contact. We have information about Zephyrian military capabilities that you will find useful. Krell considered the request carefully. Direct contact with the human survivors would anger the Zephyrians, but it might also provide valuable intelligence about their former allies. More importantly, it would send a message to other species that the Axiom Confederation would not tolerate genocide, even when committed by more powerful neighbors. Captain Morrison, now promoted to Admiral of the Human Survivor Fleet, received Krell's response 3 days later. The Axiom were willing to provide covert support, including safe harbor for human ships and intelligence about Zephyrian military movements. It was the first sign that humanity might have allies in their war for survival. The meeting took place at a hidden Axiom research station in neutral space. Admiral Morrison arrived aboard the retrofitted warship Retribution, accompanied by Commander Price and Dr. Carter. Ambassador Krell greeted them with formal courtesy, but his reptilian features showed obvious relief at seeing living humans. "We feared your species was truly extinct," Krell admitted during their private conference. "The Zephyrians announced your elimination with great celebration. They claimed it was necessary for galactic peace and prosperity." Morrison's jaw tightened with anger. "They tried to murder every human man, woman, and child in known space. They celebrated the deaths of billions of innocent people. Now they're occupying our worlds and building their cities where our homes used to be." Dr. Carter presented the evidence they had gathered about Zephyrian war crimes. Images of destroyed human cities, recorded messages from dying colonists, and intercepted communications showing how the aliens had planned the genocide for decades. The documentation was overwhelming and horrifying. "This changes everything," Krell said after reviewing the evidence. "If the Zephyrians could eliminate an entire species so easily, what's to stop them from doing it again to others they consider inconvenient?" The Axiom weren't the only species having such thoughts. Throughout the galaxy, alien governments were quietly reassessing their relationships with the Zephyrian Empire. The Crystalline Collective began canceling trade agreements. The hive minds started fortifying their border systems. Even species that had been friendly with the Zephyrians were now viewing them with suspicion and fear. Admiral Morrison launched the most ambitious human operation yet attempted, a coordinated assault on Zephyr Prime's orbital defense network. The target was the heavily defended space stations that protected the Zephyrian homeworld from attack. Strike Commander Beth Turner led the attack force, while communications specialist Greg Hayes prepared to broadcast a message to every species in the galaxy. Beth Turner was a former cargo pilot who had lost her husband and children in the destruction of Paradise Bay Colony. She had spent 2 years training for this moment, learning to fight with the cold precision of someone who had nothing left to lose. "All units, begin the attack," she ordered as 40 human warships emerged from hyperspace around Zephyr Prime. The battle lasted 6 hours and cost the lives of 23 human pilots, but it achieved its objective. The orbital defense network was destroyed, leaving the Zephyrian homeworld vulnerable for the first time in centuries. More importantly, the attack demonstrated that humanity now possessed the military power to threaten even the most heavily defended Zephyrian positions. As the battle raged, Greg Hayes transmitted his prepared message on every frequency used by galactic civilizations. The broadcast was simple but devastating. "This is the human species addressing all intelligent life in the galaxy. 2 years ago, the Zephyrian Empire attempted to exterminate our entire race. They called us a plague and tried to wipe us from existence. But we survived. We remember. And we want the galaxy to know what kind of neighbors the Zephyrians really are." The message included video evidence of Zephyrian war crimes intercepted, communications about the genocide planning, and testimony from human survivors. Within hours, the broadcast was being discussed in government chambers and news networks across dozens of star systems. The political impact was immediate and severe. The Galactic Trade Council suspended all economic agreements with the Zephyrian Empire pending an investigation into the genocide allegations. The Neutral Zone Authority demanded that Zephyrian forces withdraw from all disputed territories. Even longtime Zephyrian allies began distancing themselves from the Empire. Admiral Vexstar watched his political support crumble as reports flooded in from across Zephyrian space. Human attacks were increasing in frequency and boldness. Zephyrian colonies were being abandoned as civilian populations fled in panic. Military morale was collapsing as officers realized they were fighting a war they could not win. Admiral, we're receiving surrender requests from 6 different colonies, Commander Zeflock reported. The garrison commanders say they can't defend against human attacks with their current forces. But surrender was not an option the humans were offering. Every Zephyrian installation that tried to negotiate found their communications ignored. The human survivors had learned the lesson the Zephyrians taught them. In wars of extermination, there could be only one outcome. Intelligence reports showed that other alien species were now actively supporting the human war effort. The Axiom were providing safe harbor and intelligence. The Silicon Consortium was selling advanced weapons to human forces. Even the mysterious energy beings were rumored to be sharing technology with the survivors. As Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching Zephyrian colonies burn on distant worlds, he reflected on how much had changed since the day they discovered their species near extinction. The scattered refugees hiding in the Helix Nebula had become a galactic military power. The victims of genocide had become the judges of their would-be exterminators. The galaxy was watching, and the message was clear. The species that had tried to erase humanity from existence would pay the ultimate price for their crimes. The hunt was no longer just about human survival. It had become about justice for an entire race, and the rest of the galaxy was choosing sides. 5 years had passed since the Zephyrians tried to wipe humanity from the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the last Zephyrian stronghold through the main view screen. The once mighty empire that had commanded respect throughout known space was now reduced to a single fortified world in the outer rim. The transformation of humanity during those 5 years had been remarkable. The scattered survivors who once hid in asteroid fields now commanded a fleet of over 200 warships. Human technology had advanced beyond anything their species had achieved before the genocide. Their military tactics were studied and feared by every alien species in the galaxy. Commander Helen Price, now Admiral Price of the Second Fleet, stood beside Morrison as they prepared for the final assault. Intelligence reports show approximately 50,000 Zephyrians on the surface, she said, mostly civilians and a few military units that refused to surrender. The Zephyrian Empire had collapsed gradually over the past 2 years. One by one, their colonies had fallen to human attacks or been abandoned by populations fleeing in terror. Their military had surrendered in groups, their officers preferring captivity to death at human hands. Their government had fractured as different factions blamed each other for the catastrophe that had befallen their species. Dr. Carter, now humanity's chief strategist, reviewed the final intelligence reports about Zephyrian capabilities. They have no orbital defenses left, no fleet, no allies willing to help them. They're completely at our mercy. The biological weapon that Carter had developed years earlier sat unused in the Retribution's weapons bay. The human leadership had never deployed it, choosing instead to wage their war through conventional means. They had remained true to their promise not to become genocidal monsters like their enemies. Communications officer Lisa Rodriguez received an incoming transmission from the planet's surface. Admiral, we're getting a message from the Zephyrian. Leadership, they want to negotiate. The face that appeared on the main screen belonged to Admiral Vextar himself. The architect of the human genocide looked older and defeated, his blue skin pale with exhaustion. Admiral Morrison, I am prepared to discuss terms of surrender for my people. Morrison studied the alien who had ordered the deaths of billions of humans. What terms do you think you're in a position to negotiate, Admiral Vextar? The extermination of your species was ordered by radical elements within our government, Vextar replied. The moderate faction, which I now represent, had no knowledge of these extreme plans. We are prepared to make reparations for the actions of these extremists. Dr. Carter checked his data files and shook his head. Admiral, our intelligence shows that 89% of the Zephyrian population supported the genocide. The vote in their governing council was nearly unanimous. There were no moderate factions or extremist plots. Morrison leaned forward. In his command chair, Admiral Vextar, we have recordings of you personally celebrating what you called the successful cleansing of the human plague. We have your strategic plans detailing how you would use our worlds as breeding colonies. Don't insult our intelligence with lies about extremist factions. The silence that followed lasted several minutes. Finally, Vextar spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. What do you want from us? Justice, Morrison replied simply. The human fleet began its final operation the next day. But instead of launching a devastating orbital bombardment, they implemented a plan that Dr. Carter had been developing for months. Transport ships landed on the planet's surface, while human marines secured strategic locations. The Zephyrian population was rounded up and loaded onto cargo vessels for relocation. The destination was a barren planet in a distant star system that the humans had prepared specifically for this purpose. It had breathable atmosphere and adequate water supplies, but no valuable resources or strategic importance. The entire Zephyrian species would be relocated to this single world under permanent human supervision. Admiral Vextar was among the last group to be transported. As he was led aboard the human transport ship, he turned to face Morrison one final time. You're making a mistake, he said. Genocide is never the answer. You'll become the very monsters you claim to oppose. Morrison's expression remained cold and professional. We're not committing genocide, Admiral. Every member of your species will survive to see their new home. But your days of threatening other species are over forever. The relocation took 3 months to complete. When it was finished, the Zephyrian Empire had ceased to exist. Their homeworld was turned into a memorial for the human victims of their genocide. Their former colonies were distributed among the alien species that had supported humanity during the war. Their military technology was destroyed or confiscated. The last surviving Zephyrians found themselves confined to a world they named Exile in their own language. They would be allowed to live and rebuild their society, but they would never again possess the technology or resources to threaten other species. Human monitoring stations in orbit would ensure they remained isolated from the rest of the galaxy. Captain Lisa Rodriguez, now serving as humanity's first ambassador to the Galactic Council, addressed the assembled representatives of 43 alien species. The council chamber fell silent as she began to speak, every delegate aware that they were witnessing a historic moment. The human species stands before you today, not as victims seeking sympathy, but as survivors demanding justice. Rodriguez said, 5 years ago, the Zephyrian Empire attempted to exterminate our entire race. They killed billions of innocent men, women, and children. They celebrated our deaths and planned to build their civilization on our graves. She paused to let her words sink in before continuing. We survived their genocide through determination, courage, and the support of species like the Axiom Confederation, who chose to stand with us against tyranny. We fought back not just for ourselves, but for every species that might face similar threats in the future. The holographic displays around the chamber showed images from the war, burning human colonies, desperate survivor ships, the systematic destruction of Zephyrian military forces, and finally, the relocation of the Zephyrian population to their prison world. The Zephyrian Empire is no more, Rodriguez announced. Their species will survive, but under permanent supervision to ensure they can never again threaten galactic peace. We have proven that genocide will not be tolerated in civilized space. Any species that attempts to exterminate another will face the same fate that befell the Zephyrians. Ambassador Krell of the Axiom Confederation was the first to speak after Rodriguez finished her presentation. The human species has shown remarkable restraint in their quest for justice. They could have chosen to eliminate their enemies entirely, but instead they chose a path that preserves life while ensuring security. Other delegates began to voice their support for the human actions. The Silicon Consortium praised humanity's technological innovations. The hive minds expressed admiration for their tactical brilliance. Even species that had initially remained neutral now spoke in favor of the human cause. The vote to establish the Human Concordat as a recognized galactic power was unanimous. The species that had once faced extinction was now recognized as a major force for stability and justice in known space. Human colonies would be re-established on their former worlds, but now they would be protected by one of the most advanced military forces in the galaxy. Dr. Carter, now elderly but still sharp, worked with human engineers to design new technologies for peaceful exploration and colonization. The weapons of war that had saved their species would be replaced by tools of construction and discovery. But the memory of what humanity had endured would never be forgotten. Admiral Morrison, approaching retirement, stood once more on the bridge of the Retribution as it departed from the former Zephyrian homeworld. The memorial to human genocide victims was complete, its eternal flame visible from orbit as a reminder of the price of hatred and the cost of underestimating the will to survive. The Zephyrians had tried to erase humanity from existence because they viewed them as a plague upon the galaxy. Instead, their attempted genocide had forged the survivors into something stronger and more determined than they had ever been before. The price they paid for their crimes was the loss of their empire, their freedom, and their place among the stars. Humanity had endured, and the galaxy would never forget the lesson their survival had taught. Genocide would not be tolerated, and those who attempted it would face justice at the hands of species that refused to bow to tyranny. The hunt was over, but the memory of it would echo through the stars for generations to come.